Sculpture, derived from the Latin word sculptura, is the art of making 2D or three-dimensional forms by carving out of wood or stone. There are two main types of sculpture, and the first is sculpture in the round, which is a sculpture that can be viewed from any angle all around it. The second type of sculpture are relief sculptures, which project out of a flat surface. And there are three main types of relief sculptures. And the first is high relief, where elements project prominently out of a base. And the second is bas relief, where elements project but very close to the base. The third is intaglio, where the features are sunken onto the surface. There are six main elements of sculpture, and the first is contour, which is basically the outlines of a sculpture in space. The second is planes, which is an area defined by a more or less abrupt change in direction. The third is color, determined majorly by the material of the sculpture. The fourth is mass, which is a tangible solid that occupies space. Scale is how massive or small a sculpture is in relation to the surrounding. And lastly, texture, the surface quality of a sculpture. There are four main types of principles of sculpture, and the first is proportion, which is a relationship of parts of the sculpture in relation to the whole. The second is balance, which is how stable a sculpture is physically and visually. The third is movement, the flow of elements of a sculpture. And the fourth is repetition, which is the use of the same elements to enrich a sculpture. There are four main techniques of creating sculpture, and the first is sculpture by subtraction or carving, which is cutting away unwanted materials. The second is addition, which is modeling or shaping malleable material. The third is casting, use of molds to create forms. And the fourth is assembling or construction, adding found materials to create a sculpture. Carving, as you can see there, is subtracting materials from wood. Assemblage is the use of found materials to create a sculpture, as you can see in that horse. And modeling is the use of malleable material like clay to create a sculpture. Casting is the use of molds to create a sculpture. There are three main techniques of casting, and the first is the use of slip mold, where slip is poured into a mold made out of plaster of Paris. Water is absorbed by the plaster of Paris to make a layer, and the excess slip is poured out and a body is formed. The same steps are repeated here, where 1 is the shape of the form and 2 is a mold created using the same shape. 3 is slip being poured into the mold, and in 5 the excess slip is poured out. In 6 the mold is broken out and the final form is released. The second type of casting technique is the use of press mold, where a solid material is pressed onto a mold to create the form. The third casting technique is the lost wax technique, where a simple form is made out of clay in 1. 2 finer details are made using wax on the form, and the finished model is encased in strong clay. Pins hold the entire or internal clay mold in place, and then the model is heated where the wax melts, forming a void. Bronze is poured into the cavity, and once it's cooled, the outer mold is chipped away to reveal the final cast. This is the same model using clay, where the form is sculpted using clay and all the details input, and bronze is then poured inside and the clay chipped out.